episodes of season 1 of Tokyo Vice are now streaming on HBO Max, and this is a show that I have been following for a few weeks now. I don't know how many people are talking about this show, I don't know how many people are going to review this show, but I was very interested in seeing it for a couple of reasons, but we'll get more into that in a bit. This follows loosely the true life events which were recounted in the memoir by Jake Adelstein. In this one, he's played by Ansel Elgort, and you essentially follow how he's trying to find out a lot about a situation going down with the Yakuza clans. They're warring against each other for reasons that seemed to be a bit mysterious at the time, and he's trying to work with other journalists as well as police officers in trying to figure this out, and that's essentially the entire story. As he starts off, however, he's the first white reporter at the Meicho in Japan, and so that's a bit of a confusing thing for some people. It's like, hey, when do they hire foreign reporters now? And so that is also an interesting angle. And there's a bunch of other side plots going on, which have some of them I'm definitely sure have been added in there because you want to create somewhat of a TV show around it. I actually thought this was going to be a limited series at first. However, minor spoiler warning, you get to the end of the season and they've clearly set up for a season 2. So there's a lot more to the story yet to be told, and clearly it sets up a lot more to come. I was interested, however, for a couple of reasons. For one, I heard Michael Mann was attached to this. Now, Michael Mann is kind of a legend when it comes to directing, and when you have Vice attached to it, especially when you look at stuff like Miami Vice or even, of course, Heat, for instance, obviously I'm very interested in seeing what he would bring to it. And I heard that he was also directing some of it. He only directed episode 1 though, but it doesn't matter because episode 1 hooks you from the start. You are invested in this story that's happening. It's very fast paced. It's kind of intriguing. And as you start to see the stuff that's going down in Japan, and they constantly tell you that certain things are just being sort of scoffed away, like, hey, that's just a thing that just happens here, we don't really report on it. They're constantly invested in why that's the case and what else is going on underneath the surface. As the episodes progress, they're not quite as stylishly directed, but make no mistake, they're as stylish to look at. This is a gorgeous looking show. The cinematography is incredible. Lots of neon soaked backgrounds. I mean, they really invested in the budget for this thing on location, and you see some really great sights as a result of it. There was really not a shot in this that really bothered me. It's all very, very well filmed. And it has a gorgeous score, which is accompanying it as well. A lot of emphasis on Japanese language in the scripting as well, which makes sense because this takes place, entirely in Japan. But I liked how much there was. Even the characters who are not Japanese, like Elgort's character, like Adelstein, he's speaking Japanese fluently. The first episode is about him taking a test to basically end up becoming a reporter and taking on those jobs. And it's really well handled. As far as the performances go, I think Ansel Elgort's good. He does a good job. However, I found him to be the least interesting character of the entire thing. Like, he's not bad in the role. It's just that the subplots and the other stuff that is going on, especially involving the Yakuza, all that stuff is so much more interesting that whenever it cut back to the journalism angle of it, I was like, yeah, okay, that's also nice, but I kind of want to go back to what's going on with these two warring clans, because this seems like the most interesting thing, the stuff between the Chiharakai and the Tozawa clan. Like, that's where the stuff, the show really is flourishing. And all of that was really great. Ken Watanabe, though, he plays a detective and who is really, really great. And the stuff with him, Katagiri, that's his name, that's fantastic. Like, he was the most interesting character in a lot of ways. However, the most interesting character is one of the Yakuza named Seto. Like, he's fantastic in this. I'm sorry if I'm slipping on the actor's name at the moment, but he was outstanding. And there's an entire arc with him that you get that is really, really affecting, and you really get invested in his arc as the show goes on. Also, it was nice seeing my girl Rinko Kikuchi in this. I really love her as an actress, and she was really cool in here too. And you get a lot more with her as the episodes progress, so that was nice to see. I always think she has a very charismatic screen presence to bring to things, and I'm just glad that she's given stuff here to do. I have still not gotten over just how badly they went from first Pacific Rim to second Pacific Rim in terms of her character. Do you remember there was a second Pacific Rim? Just curious. One thing I also really liked about this show was how it portrayed the desperation that exists within every character, because each one of them is trying to get something, each one of them is trying to go through all kinds of hoops and fences to get that thing. And even if it's the most incorruptible of characters or the nicest of characters, each one of them is gonna have to do things that are not necessarily the nicest. But the desperation also extends to people who are not on the better side of the law. And when you see those characters, maybe in one scene they'll do something like brutally murder someone, but in the next scene you see that weight that is bearing down on them in terms of this profession. I speak specifically here to the Yakuza side of things. The show portrays that very nicely. It's not like Sopranos level something where it's like, oh, this is the mafia, but you're still kind of hoping that no one gets the bullet. But it's somewhat working on those same levels. Like you're kind of invested in each arc, which is something which is very commendable. Like it's hard to look at something like the Yakuza and say, oh yeah, I fully understand what you guys are going through right now. And it is a well executed thing, which goes back to the point I made about how it's the more interesting of the two plots, especially revolving around the investigative journalism side of it. I really liked a lot of that, and as I said, it hooks you from the first episode, and you are invested in it, like throughout, all the way till the end. However, like I said, it's got its issues here and there. Like I said, it's not always the most interesting, especially when it comes to the investigative journalism side of it, until a little bit later. Eventually, when you start to sort of mess up and there's like certain issues that come along the way of this, I found it to be a lot more interesting, because up until that point it was kind of like, all right, that's a thing too. But when those plots started to merge together a lot more, I was much more invested in it, and the final few episodes were really, like, I couldn't stop watching it. They're very rivetingly made, and I was enjoying myself. Does it sometimes get a little lost in trying to tell some other stories while also trying to tell something else? Sure, sometimes there's a little scatterbrain stuff going on here and there, but it mostly manages to stay consistent. And like I said, it is constantly interesting. There's never a point in it where I thought, well, I'm checking my watch, I want this episode to get over. Never like that. I was constantly involved in this entire world. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of it if they do make a season 2, which I'm sure they will. I have to say, as far as HBO Max shows goes, this one is probably the biggest one that I've seen, like especially into HBO Max originals. Because I guess Peacemaker, yes, but like you can clearly tell the money's on the screen over here quite a lot, and they've really gone all out with this thing, and the stuff that they've done to film it is genuinely remarkable. I had a great time watching Tokyo Vice Season 1. I'm looking forward to Season 2, and I'm gonna give it a B+. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to a couple of more TV reviews very soon. I have a few things to talk about, a few shows that are out this weekend as well. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.